There we go. End recording. Not yet, but you don't. Right. Hi, welcome there. This is the boy Hotspur. I'm joined here by my co-host, cohort, and henchman Chris, and we will be bringing you shows with other people. I hasten to add, after games, and we had a game last night, as you may well be aware. So this is us talking about Leicester City, and a few moments silence while we bring in the priests of the lower orders. Leicester City were a bit rubbish. I don't think that's unkind or unfair comment. They had a poor pre-season. They beat one mob, and they played a very shoddy selection. We were very showbiz in the people that we played. But they played real teams, and they managed to beat, or they were beaten by, I can't remember, Shrewsbury Town. That was a class opposition they were dealing with. But they also had players missing, and our old friend Jamie Vardy, who drew lots of comment from people all over the place during the game, managed to get in and play. But he's, how old is he? 53, something like that now. So, what were your immediate feelings, sir?
My immediate feelings were what absolute tripe. You're correct in your assessment about Leicester City. No disrespect, but they looked like a team who had immediately come up and are about immediately to go back down. On their starting 11, Danny Rose would have needed Google to understand some of those players. And a pensioner at the age of 37, Jamie Vardy, who I actually saw a very funny tweet about last night, which read, Jamie Vardy won the conference with Fleetwood, got promoted with Leicester, won the Premier League, won the FA Cup, got relegated, got promoted again, and drank 90,378 cans of Red Bull. And Spurs still haven't won anything in that time. And that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah,
you had a team of what if so, but so ifs, and who the hell are these guys? And at the outset, you thought, come on, they're here for the taking. This is the sort of team, if we have any aspirations to do anything, we should be laying down something and putting 3 or 4 past these guys.
But we're going to go through the players as we choose and find them, okay? But maybe this should be something for later in the discussion, but I think we need to get it out of the way now, because I think you and I have a mind. We hold adult conversations about Spurs. We, as viewers can see, neither of us are blushing incels, and we've been around the block, and we know football, which is one of the key criteria for anybody getting involved with me in any of these things. Do you... Look, Leicester City, when they scored, we acknowledged they weren't good, and they didn't play particularly well. I mean, Cooper, bless him, he did what everybody else has done since the first 10 games of last season and had us tactically sussed. Had blocked those lines across the back there. They routinely had 5 men in the box. So we know the sort of mechanics. Spurs had 70% of the ball, but it's what we did with it that counted, or rather didn't. But the thing for me, and I think this was the tipping point, that Leicester City equalised, and the rain was coming down, and they felt and they looked to me energised. And I've sensed that the crowd picked up a little bit with them as well. I don't think the crowd ever left them. The crowd were brutal, and I'll come back to that later. But what do you think? What is missing at Spurs that we don't have this sort of? I don't even know if phrases like esprit de corps even covers it. It seems to me just like basic. I don't know.
We've got this saying that Spurs mentality and DNA will always shine through, and it's a losing mentality. We haven't got any leaders or winners on the pitch. Yes, we have a World Cup winning centre half, but he's a bloody liability. We'll come on to him later.
Yeah.
But we don't have. We're not energised. We don't have that passion. We don't do something. You sit back and take note and think, actually, they can make a statement here. We do everything but that. We were on the verge of imploding when they went 1-1. They were grinding us down. They were applying pressure. We were giving away the ball. We looked nervous. You knew any Spurs fan could probably predict what way that game was going to end.
It just looked to me that not only did we, and I totally agree with you, we instantly felt incredibly vulnerable. And I remember watching football with my dad right? And he used to get a few of these things right, bless him. But if a team that failed to score, failed to do something, normally it would visit them back upon them in a negative sense. So if you failed to score and you were dominating the game, Spurs did score. It was a good goal by Porro. And again, we can have a lot to talk about at the end, but I'll come back to him. But the deal for me was that there was no heart, there was no fight in the dog when Leicester equalised. When we scored, you could almost sense it wasn't so much like the foot coming off the pedal, but there seemed to be almost like a sense of relief that after the dozens of chances, I lost count of corners in the first half, that something actually came together. But Leicester, they absolutely acted like men, acted like footballers. And you said there, oh, I couldn't even name half of them. The triple letter word scored in Scrabble and blah, blah, blah. But these guys as a collective, you could see them kind of go, right, we're back into this. And Spurs, when it came to fighting to take the third goal, they weren't involved. They weren't at the races.
I don't wish an injury on anybody, but I think the injury came at the right time for us in respect to Bentancur, because the 9 minutes that the game was delayed really took the wind out of Leicester's sails. And had it not been for that, I certainly think in those 9 minutes after they scored, they may have well have got something out of that.
And I'll just throw in there, actually, because I people watch constantly. And as you know, that's what I had to tell the cops. But I noticed when that game, because they do this thing now, we're all so shallow and frail and we can't be exposed to nasty things. But clearly the two players bumped heads. And the cameras immediately went, Junk, we're going to look at, But you could see the Tottenham players standing around going, oh dear.
Yeah.
And half of me, there was winks was in somebody's ear, and half of me was saying, and I don't mean this in an unkind sense, I mean this in this is what I was seeing, was, well, you remember what happened to Fabrice Muamba, don't you? This willingness to be drawn into the gloom and doom, opposed to get the medics on. And thankfully he was okay, he was fine. But I felt there was an awful lot of I've stood next to people who've been in a very bad way in hospitals and outside of hospitals, and you can't go anywhere. You stand with them, you show your support. But I just got this feeling they were a few of them, and I'm not going to name names, but a few of them were standing around like fishwives. And he's very bad. He's very bad. You could argue, what do you expect them to do? But I think there's a way you stand by somebody who's been in an accident that is in there in a sort of collegial way, and there's a way that you stand there and go, oh, this is very bad. I wouldn't want that to be me. And I just got this vibe off of the guys that there's just this weakness, this pathetic sort of vibe.
But what do you expect when you have so many embryos in your side, and you also have people with no experience of life, and you have people who've entered the professional game at a very young age, being paid £60,000-70,000 a week ever since, and they haven't had the exposure to life that you, I, and many of your viewers will have had.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I have with the fan base the entire time. I posted, it was a curious thing, I wasn't even going to mention this, but I don't post on Twitter much more. It's good English, I should write for a living. I don't post on X particularly often. And I posted a thing saying, well done for getting rid of so much of the junk, Spurs, but you are going to have to replace it with quality. And that got a little bit of traction. I think it was about 8,000 people saw it, engaged with it. And I think it was 50 odd people gave it a thumbs up or a like. But out came the incels, the involuntary celibates in the fan base, all of them with about 50, 60 followers, because they have no social skills on top of all of the burdens of their immaturity. Oh, you're so miserable. You're And I just thought, do you not watch us? I mean, do you not read what I wrote in the first instance? I mean, the idea that you'd say something, oh, you've got to replace them with quality. That's a bad thing. 8 in the Deloitte Money League, in the planet and the globe. But there is an undercurrent of fans out there who would have been quite happy to call the game off, and they did bump heads, and that is serious. Does have to be looked at. But as you say there, I think there's people with very little life experience kicking around making pronouncements thing. And I mean, like I say, I don't use that end of social media particularly anymore. But I could just imagine people say, "Oh, well, actually, it's 1-1. Let's just all go home."
I've actually heard that Matt Hayes required counselling after that clash of heads, and was trying to get the game called off.
No, I said the other week that I was waiting for him to announce that Richarlison was actually with child, was going to be live streaming from a maternity ward, and running a competition for people to name the baby. But that's the class of punter that's kicking about, and they do exist. Nobody's making them up. It's not a straw man argument. There will be a guy out there who would have been very happy at 1-1 to say, "Well, it's a little bit windy and rainy. Maybe we should go home." But I mean, so thinking of Spurs. It's not difficult. We don't need to talk for weeks about this. We don't need Jack Klugman as Quincy to go through the entrails. Spurs can't finish their dinner. What do you think is going on?
For that team to be successful, it's going to boil down to the quality of your wide players. You've got a man who looks like he's seen a ghost, a rabbit in front of headlights on the right side of midfield,
Who's
Brennan
that?
Johnson.
Do you know? I came up with this on my Substack, and I don't think I've told it on here, so I'm gonna tell it because I think it's funny. I think he's a hairdresser that gets beaten up by other hairdressers. I don't dislike him, but there is a streak of. There seems to be. I mean, you can get supplements these days for like testosterone, and I would definitely have a word with the physios. And he needs a bit of oomph.
And then on the other side, it's about time we had a difficult conversation and admitted that Son is not the player he once was. He's 32 years of age. We all get old. We all lose our pace. We all lose our power. But for 83 minutes last night, I was thinking, is this bloke actually on the pitch? How many times did the commentators mention his name? What did he actually do in a white shirt last night?
I didn't care for him at all. I mean, he wasn't bad, and this brings me back to a lot of our players. They weren't terrible. If you go through the numbers, and by God, I've got so many of them now. It's been a slow work, but there's nobody that sticks out. The excuse, when you can look at it and go, bloody Kulusevski, why was he playing on the right side? We needed him centrally or whatever. There was nothing that was glaringly obvious. There was just appeared to be a shared lack of cohesion throughout the entire team. I mean, we've had this kicking around online and everything for a while, but it's all very well shouting, what do they do in training? But do you think we need a set piece coach?
I think not only do we need a set piece coach, but we need a change of mind by a coach. And you've got Pedro Porro playing as a right wing back, who's probably the most creative, offensive player we've got. How about pushing him forward? And if we go keep Spence, give him some minutes and an opportunity at right wing back, then at least you've got somebody on the right side who can beat a man, can cross a ball and chips in with the occasional goal, which our right-sided winger's not doing at the moment.
I haven't got the hang of this new thing yet, but to put it on a graphic, if you would, I mean, his most preferred, or where he's resting, or wherever you have these positions that the stats guy come up with, so you can see where people are playing and where they're effective and where they're ineffective. And Porro was basically playing up on the far right channel.
Well, for him to get the box with a header for the goal, you're thinking that's your right fullback.
Well, that was where he was. I mean, he was playing effectively, to put it into language you could all understand, in the same position that Kulusevski would normally play in. He wasn't at right back for more than about 2 or 3 touches of the ball. There was very little involvement with him in that spot. But I think with Romero, that is a real indicator that tactically there's something not right.
Yeah, it doesn't look a balanced, cohesive side. And every time, like for the equaliser, Romero completely went to sleep and completely went over to Van der Ven, leaving a 37-year-old geriatric all the time in Leicester to head one home.
So, I mean, I've been through the data, and I'm going to keep putting it out over the next few days. There's plenty of it, bizarrely, even though the game itself was as banal as it appears, it was a 1-1 draw, and we've covered Leicester and where they came from and all the rest of it. The question that's ringing in my ears, because I started to ask it at the latter stage of the last season, and I know you did, is Ange up to the job? And I'll caveat that.
No.
The reason I ask, and I like resounding, definite replies like that, but the reason I ask is that I'm not going to knock what he's done. I understand what he's done. I appreciate what he's done. I would have done if I was a Japanese fellow or a Scotsman. I would have been absolutely delighted with what he's achieved. But this is a different level. This is the business of when somebody comes around your house, and I like to do a bit of cooking. Somebody says, "Bloody hell, that's nice." Yeah, there's a big leap between that and going on to like MasterChef or Bake Off or even these pro-am things, because it's just there's a gulf there, and then there's a huge leap beyond that you're actually running your own restaurant. There's a big difference between making a nice bowl of spaghetti or cooking a nice bit of gingerbread, whatever it might be, and the 2 or 3 steps above it. I'm not seeing anything from Ange. We get these fireside chats of, oh yeah, when I was out in Australia and in Japan, mate, and fantastic, absolutely sensational. But I'm not seeing anything from him. And we had this business, which I picked up on this morning, where he started off on the tail end of the pre-season by saying that we were much improved, which I thought was absolute hokum. He pulled that out of the air. And then he said we were much better placed, which again is coming down the other side of that hill. And then it's his press conference after the game. He said, well, we're seeing some of the similar problems that we had last term, which says to me that if we go back past improved and we go back past Dover, we get to, we're exactly where we started.
Well, you look at the starting lineup last night, with the exception of Solanke, it was the same 10 that had finished last season. So for all this wheeling and dealing we've been doing, trimming the squad, getting rid of some of those that we've perceived as deadwood, that team last night wasn't any stronger than what we put out last season.
I think that is something that has confused some of the fan base, because certainly some of the comments that I drew on that tweet I mentioned earlier. Oh, we've done this. We've had a great window. Well, if you just call your jets and actually look at not even the minutiae of it, but if you look at the reality, is that Oliver Skipp, I'm not going to mince words with. The guy's a nice guy, fantastic, but a mediocre footballer.
A championship footballer alongside Harry Winks, you can call it now, can't you?
Absolutely, and you can see it last night. I mean, Harry Winks, somebody cracked a joke about never seen him play so many forward passes. Well, that's because he got so bloody comfortable at Tottenham. And I think we go back to that environment, that culture, and always at the spa nice and all that sort of things. But forget about Skipp, but Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and again, I haven't got the hang of this thing. I'll put my little map thing up. But I did a radar thing that they produce of players, and it was Højbjerg, Basuma, Maddison, and blah blah. Skipp is in the middle, the size of like a tangerine, and the player's footstep, if you like, the footprint got bigger and bigger as you went on. And Højbjerg was the most impactful midfield player that we had. Now, I agree. I don't believe he was the way forward. He was the future under anybody apart from perhaps Mourinho. I think that's the reality, but I don't want to open up people commenting on that, because invariably they don't say anything useful. But this is a guy with huge experience, and a guy who, under even Postecoglou, got appearances from the bench because he was needed. It wasn't because anybody was bored. It was because he was needed. And now he's gone.
Was he needed when you deployed him at left back towards the end of last season, when you had Dragusin, who had recently joined the club, who was a defender who had played a number of games at Genoa as, guess what, left back. So he was trying to resell. It doesn't make any sense. Pre-season, Donnelly played him as a left back on our tour, and then he's been loaned out, where he's immediately featured for Leyton Orient in the number 10 position. So,
and they've given a contract to Mikey Moore, and then not put him in the squad for that game.
Put him in the squad, When it comes to, Ange says that everything starts and finishes with him, and all of the players at the club are ones that he specifically wants, that asks significant questions about his ability to identify talent, because anybody who signs Brennan Johnson for 42 million, rubbish. Timo Werner, absolutely diabolical. So
I actually think that, I mean, first of all, I would say it's all very well and good. Postecoglou using such language as I get to say yes or no, but that's like my missus telling me whether I'm having this or that for dinner, because that's all there is. If I start to get cute and say, well, actually, I fancy option C, it's down the road. There is no option C, and that's certainly what Pochettino ran into. And Spurs fans, again, a little bit quick to forget that this guy stood up publicly and said, "I think I've got the wrong job description here." And he's basically he's not running the company. He's a foreman, and he does what he can with the staff that he's given. And Timo Werner, I don't have anything constructive to say about. I think his CV speaks for him, which is a line I use about managers as well. And the idea of Solanke, I think they've overpaid for him. I think I found myself agreeing with Jamie Carragher last night on Sky, who said that, not a bad go, but certainly probably around about the 50 mil mark at best. Because you're looking at a player which characters like Neville and Postecoglou have excused and explained away why they're at Bournemouth and not really setting the world on fire. And we get all of this claptrap, and it is wishful thinking about, oh, well, he's been at so-and-so, he's been at so-and-so, and he's had to cope with these things. Why don't we buy people who don't come with caveats, who don't come with an instruction manual? We're buying so-and-so, but here's the deal, here's the spin.
So I heard a brilliant one last night about Solanke, and it was that Postecoglou was attracted to him because of the amount of diversity that he'd had to face in his life, that he'd been this protege at Chelsea. It hadn't worked out. He had to go to Vitesse Arnhem on loan. He then came back and was sold to Liverpool. He was there for 2 years, played 7 games, and he dropped himself into the lower ebbs of football to rebuild himself and gain his self-belief, and eventually ended up at Bournemouth, where last season, when he scored 19 goals, was his standout season. Prior to that, his numbers were terrible. But he's 27 years of age. We shouldn't be signing people because we think they're journeymen, have had to go through tough times and have had to draw upon their inner strength to overcome these things. We should be signing people because they'll make a difference and they'll win us games and they'll do what top goal scorers do.
Yeah, I mean, call me miserable, but in life, there are certain things that do not turn me on, that do not get me excited. One is people who've had a journey, because when I was growing up, a journey, you hoped that the train didn't break down in a siding on the way to work.
I had a bastard of a journey this morning when the 705 cancelled.
Exactly. So that's a journey to me, not the fact that my mum left my dad, or my dog ate my cat, any of that rubbish. And I've got to be blunt. And again, you can say, well, this guy ain't got no charity in the fibre of his being, not anywhere. But I don't like competition winners. I wish them well. You were lucky. You got the thing. The guy phoned you up, or you got a card through the post. Come in. You've won a car. You've won a hat. Whatever it might be. But these guys arrive at Spurs, all big smiles. I've always wanted to play for Tottenham. Why did you want to play for Tottenham?
I remain extremely grateful to this day that Jim never fixed it for me to milk a goat blindfolded.
Well, I think we're back in that territory again with the defunct News at 10 reporter. But this business of these people absolutely killing themselves to say how happy they are to be here, I actually quite like, because I grew up understanding football and I'm an adult. I actually quite like the threat of a player you had on your books being monitored by other clubs. Could be doing the off, like with Romero. I have no confidence in Romero being with us if we don't win anything.
And that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Well,
which is vastly overrated. But Talk to me last night. In the dying ebbs of the game, we bring on Richarlison, and he has that header right at the death.
I thought it was a good clearance.
It
I thought
was
it was
harder.
very.
It was harder to miss the goal than it would have been to hit it, and that just shows when you need an impact player from the bench, somebody's going to decide a game. He's not that man. And if it wasn't for Saudi Arabia's strong laws, we would have got rid of him by now.
Did they legislate against stupid people with silly haircuts? I mean, I suppose they do. I don't know.
Mm.
Neck tattoos. Yeah, I mean, I mean, Richarlison sums up the Levy world experience to me. That it's like going to a theme park and you've got all these different coloured players. And don't get me wrong, I'm big on diversity when it's earned. That's called mediocrity. No, that's called meritocracy. See what I did there? But it's great. But it strikes me that you go through the Spurs squad and you go, oh yeah, and he's from this and there's a story. There's like a little pamphlet you get with each player. What I want are players that are desperate to win, desperate to earn plaudits, and it's in the old Roman army thing, money and honour. That's what they were in it for. They weren't in it because they quite like travelling and meeting people.
Just pause for one moment and think of the £162 million that was spent on Solanke, Richarlison, and Brennan Johnson.
You don't think that's value for money? I think our chairman's been working through the night. I'm very proud of him.
Hope he kept his receipt.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of that money he put in himself. Yeah, I mean, you look at who we bought, and it always goes back to, so what would you do then? I suppose you'd want to be a Manchester City or be a Chelsea, which there are still. I still see people referring to those things. They're naughty, dirty foreign money, and the fact that they're rule breakers and all this. I don't lose any sleep over that. It doesn't matter to me. I want Tottenham to be the best and Tottenham to win. And our attitude is we get these shiny little fresh-faced cherubs come through the door. And I've got to say, looking at going through the players, actually, Udogie was a bit rough around the edges, rusty, a little bit kind of fell asleep a few times. But he's not played much football, so you've got to kind of take that into consideration. Mickey was okay. Romero, Porro, like we've agreed, and I think other people are saying the same thing, at the risk of sounding like Trump. A lot of people are saying that he shouldn't be playing.
Tottenham again. Go make Tottenham great again.
Now, midfield, just to throw a curveball in, I've seen a couple of people absolutely slating James Maddison today, and I have been doing the dog's work going through all the video clips. And for those of you who aren't interested in this or aren't up to speed, normally I've got a little bit of clips because you only have so much money to spend. Now I've got a lot of clips. And I've been going through them. And I think one of the problems with Maddison is that A, he's not perfect, but none of us are. But B, you look at some of the reactions that he gets when he passes to other people, and they kill the mood, they kill the vibe, and there's no energy that he's brought carried on. And I'm trying to put a videotape with that. Sarr is what he always is. He's a really lovely kid, but he's a little bit of a flip-flop. Bentancur was doing okay, but he appears to be on a mission to A&E. But going through the rest of these players, like Gray, this was a new signing. I haven't seen him do anything outstanding in the charity minutes that he's had at Tottenham yet. But who I think is pretty bloody good, is Bergvall.
Yeah, you're not the only person to say that. Lots getting very excited about his potential.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, I have to stress, it's not quite charity minutes. It's little nips and scraps and stuff. But he looks like he understands football. He looks like he has a footballing intelligence about him. And I would question, even with all the burden of the Premier League and all the rest of it, why he isn't preferred to numerous others, especially against a really pedestrian outfit like Leicester City. Because if we'd have finished off more of the 37,000 chances we had in the first 20, 30 minutes against them, there wouldn't have been a comeback. There wouldn't have been that energy, that re-energization. There wouldn't have been that come on, let's go get them, which Spurs had to suffer. And Spence, I've got to say, Spence, I don't dislike at all. Everybody hears negative things about him. But he looked to me last night like a guy who was monitoring every step that he took. Every ball, every pass was weighted, didn't want to do anything wrong. That's fine, but I don't think we're going to see him blossom under those circumstances. I think footballers play at their best when they've got a little bit of freedom.
Yeah, agreed.
So, was there anybody then apart from Bergvall that you thought was okay? Because my sort of kind of, if I had to play a joker on giving people scores, it was Maddison, because he gave the ball away 19 times. Any way you shake it, that's absolutely unacceptable. And from a supposed mover and shaker in the midfield, it just isn't good enough. But he did very good when he didn't pass to on the Bearlock.
I'm not a big Maddison fan. I think there's a reason he didn't go to the European Championships, because there's far better players in the same position as him. I think he's lightweight. I think we, again, took advantage of a club being relegated. He needed the money to get him out of there.
Yeah.
He came with a massive reputation and hype, but there was also a warning: if he gets injured, he falls off the edge of a cliff. We saw that towards the end of last season. So yes, he's a good player, but is he upgradable? Yeah, of course he is.
Oh, I think he's eminently upgradable, but I just think the risk of sounding like a normal punter, considering we've got him and we're unlikely to shift him, that it isn't all doom and gloom surrounding him. Whereas players like Richarlison, Timo Werner, I mean, there's some. I have to say, we've got rid of some lumps, but there's some real deadwood kicking around.
But then, drawing back on what you said earlier, that has had me thinking that throughout the summer our strategy has been to sign young players, to move on the older players. But then last night, Will Lancashire, who hasn't been sent out loan, he's scored a couple of goals pre-season, wasn't even in the squad. Mikey Moore, who we've just given a 4-year contract to, is supposed to be the greatest thing since, I don't know, wasn't even in the squad. Yet, is it going to be a case of Ange doing what Ange is always good at, picking those that he thinks he can trust, and there'll be no change? Or is he going to go with the trusted old faces despite the fact they're not good enough?
I think what you've highlighted there is, in actual fact, the conflict within the club between Levy and the actual football coach, because the football coach will look at players. I looked at Bergvall, but as a fan, I'm not a coach, and I'm certainly not a Tottenham coach. And I thought to myself, within seconds of him coming on, he's nipping around, he's looking, he's searching, he's wanting the ball. I'm thinking to myself, this guy could have definitely been brought on for anybody. Could have certainly been swapped out for Sarr, perhaps. I don't know. I know there's legions of people that say could have been swapped for Maddison, but he could, against this side who had not had a great pre-season, had key players missing, who were not. Nobody predicted that they were going to be really difficult, but Spurs made them really difficult. And is he going to use these youth guys? Gray, like I said, I don't dislike the guy at all. We keep on hearing tremendous things about him. However, and this goes back to the confidence in Postecoglou, at this level, is he capable of making the impact that everybody says he will? Because Gray at the moment hasn't done anything sensational at all.
It's just potential, isn't it? And then another one that we've been hearing is generational talent and is the future. Alfie Devine didn't even make the squad. I'm just refreshing my memories to the subs bench last night, and you had Richarlison rubbish, Werner rubbish, Kulusevski not my cup of tea, Bergvall and Gray as your midfield offensive options. Well, there's no game changers on that bench.
I thought Kulu had, for my mind, had kind of picked up a bit more sort of kudos with me in the pre-season bits that we saw, because he'd moved in a bit and he was playing more centrally. Basically, he was off
that, right?
Basically, he was off that left foot, and that was really freeing him up and made the whole thing much more of a threat, opposed to the "I wonder what he'll do, I wonder what he'll do," and then cutting in. And because of that, I thought, oh, good. Then he comes on and we get treated to this over on the right-hand side thing, which was just very, very disappointing.
You think with what we got, it's the 20th today. We've got 10 days of the transfer window remaining open. Why we haven't been out and signed Locatelli from Juventus as a genuine defensive-minded central midfielder, or you've got to can't tell me that Chiesa is worse than any of the wingers at our club is available, seemingly for around 15 million quid. I just can't work it out.
The trouble is, I can work it out, and it's not because anybody's talking nonsense here. It's because Mother knows best.
Yeah,
and we have all this, and we have this nonsense with we've got Lang and we've got whoever and we've got this that, and the other. And these guys are some of these guys are even operational. They're not involved in scouting. They're not involved in this, that, and the other. He's building up this almost like franchise thing whereby if you want to buy a player, you have to refer the suggestion to him. He refers it to him. We'll look at the profit and loss sheets and all the rest of it and tell us where we are with the wage bill. And I understand why he's doing it because it's a very Daniel thing to do. But the reality is we're now starting to spend more on players, which is pleasing, and the wage bill is creeping up, which is something clearly he gave a directive out for this summer to get on top of. But as a football club, as a football proposition, it's not happening at all. And I don't think this is irrelevant, but everybody, who doesn't want to hear a bad word, and we say, oh yes, we're only one game in, you're being very hard. This week, Manchester United beat Fulham, Liverpool beat Ipswich, Arsenal beat Everton, Brighton, no they didn't, Arsenal beat Fulham, Brighton beat Everton, Newcastle beat Saints, and Villa beat West Ham. That, my friends, that is the bookmakers paying out a lot of money on ACCAs, with people going for the big boy beating the small boy.
And let's use one of those as a talking point. You look at the ambition of Brighton, 188 million. Look at the players they're bringing through the doors there. Yeah. Incredible.
And I think that they've kind of there's a feel-good factor going to come through there that's going to last as well. I think there was obviously a problem with what's his name, Herbie Goes Bananas, and Deserby, things going off the boil there. But to come back, teams like Everton need to be thumped 3-0.
Well, they're next for us at the Tottenham Stadium on a Saturday, and if we can't put on a decent showing, having drawn 1-1 with Leicester against a side that are arguably going to be in a relegation battle, 11 workman type players with very little flair or quality in there, then that's a big worry for us for the season moving forward.
With the shadow of Newgate Prison's welcome reception lounge hanging over them. Yep. I mean, they're a club that are just begging for a good pasting, and they got one last time out, courtesy of Brighton. Spurs against them. What are we hoping for? With some waffle about Richarlison going to channel his inner "I won't celebrate, but I might get a hat trick." Who knows? But this is just such a Daniel Levy mess. And people don't like hearing that. Oh, it's always his fault. Well, I hate to break it to you, Buttercup, but he's the guy in charge. And he runs the place like China. It's not a democracy.
Ange doesn't have the ambition or the strength to do it, but I'd drop both Son and I'd have dropped both and Brennan Johnson, and I'd give Wilson Odobert a go. And I'd also look at what we did on the right-hand side. We need to change. We can't allow people to be complacent and comfortable that they start week in, week out when their performances don't justify
it. I don't know, okay, which is a favourite phrase of mine, but I would be interested to know if Sonny doesn't have a "you play me every week" as long as I'm not in crutches deal in his contract. Harry Kane certainly had that deal, and you could see through gritted teeth when he was on the bench when we played in Europa games that he felt his true and natural place was to be on the park. I think Sonny's got a similar deal like that. We've got all this garbage of you're the captain, you're the second captain, you're the third captain, you're captain in waiting, all this nonsense. We don't have any captains in that team.
Well,
I mean, we see this sort of come on everybody, but...
Do you remember the leadership team that was in play under Conte?
Yeah, I remember it.
Skipp was the last one of the leadership team to leave the building the other day. All
Yeah.
5 of them are gone.
Yeah. Absolute stuff shirts, waste of flesh, oxygen, pish, and wind. The absolute shower of them. None of them fit to run a bath, you know. And as you say, the last guy out the building. And I've got to just put this in. I don't dislike Skippy, and I said it earlier, but the revisionism about him. He saw online people, oh, he's one of our own. Alistair Gold said that he hoped he was still young enough to go and to come back. What is going on in these people's minds? If I saw Skippy in the street and he looked at me, I'd say, hello, mate. Good to see you. Good luck. Blah blah blah. I have no ill feeling towards the man whatsoever. But these people, as far as Spurs being a proper big footballing force, they are a parasitic value to the whole thing because they're clogging up the machinery of us moving forward.
I forgot you retain that hatred for female Turkish barmaids.
It's only because of a Greek husband. I mean, I was provoked. I only made some decorating tips. Some people, they just fly off the handle with very little encouragement.
Just give her a Britvic orange. She'll be fine.
Fruit shoot. I think fruit shoot was the suggestion. So, yeah. So, Everton. Any thoughts on? This is so academic. I'm embarrassed to even ask you, but we've got to do it because that's what people want to hear. Who do you think we're missing player-wise? If that isn't a complete.
Do you know what? We, in my opinion, are missing a number 2 goalkeeper. If anything happens to Vicario, I would have sleepless nights and nightmares about our number 2.
Do you know the last time he actually played a what do they call it? Yeah, a professional game of football.
I guess it was when he was on loan in Sweden, where he made 14 or 16 appearances in Swedish football.
No, that was one of the high points. But more recently, he played 2 or 3 games back in 2022. So, now I'm sure he's training every week. I'm sure he knows where the fire escapes are. There aren't immediate problems.
Problem is, you bring people to Tottenham Lodge. They've got the swimming pool. They've got the state-of-the-art gymnasium. They've got the hotel. They've got the golf course. They've got chefs on tap.
The foot rub department. That's quite busy. I hear.
The social media team that greet you on your way into the building and ask who famous is on your phone. And why is there any need to run away from that place where you're living the best life?
Yeah. I just wanted to. I'm sorry to interrupt you as you're coming in listening to some rubbish rap music at full blast. But who tints the hair over your ears?
And then you, bi-directionally, you look at Tottenham, how they treat their players, and then you look at those bastards down the road, Chelsea, how they've treated Conor Gallagher and people. If they want to get rid of you, they will get rid of you. But it's the other way at Tottenham. We've had people like Emerson Royal, who we were dying to get rid of from his very first game. And they are so comfortable and relaxed that we make it a prolonged drama trying to get anybody out of Tottenham way.
Any of the professionalism in an athlete, God forbid using the phrase, but you find yourself at Spurs and the light just dims. How's your career going, mate? I had the most amazing foot rub this morning. The towels here, it's almost as if angels come down and pluck each individual little. It's just ridiculous. And trying to get these guys out the door. And Richarlison came out with some garbage about he wanted to play for his country and wanted to fulfil his potential at Tottenham. The guy's confused. I haven't got anything nice to say about him. It'll only be misconstrued as me being an extremist of some ilk or other. But the guy's a halfway. He's a chump. But he's on a massive gravy train at Spurs.
We need the goalkeeper.
Yeah,
we need
absolutely crucial.
Unless we are going to rely on Ben Davies for appearance 555 or something, we need somebody to cover a doggy. I've heard an awful rumour that Vanderson's been targeted, who is just the next Emerson Royal at right back. So either way, we need a decent fullback option.
I would genuinely work on the basis. I mean, this is far fetched because obviously, without being unkind, but I don't think Postecoglou has it in him. He's still clutching on to this. We're going to play Ange ball, which incidentally I didn't
doesn't it?
see any of last night against
I
Leicester.
think we should rename it. I think we should rename it Suicide Ball.
We used to play suicide ball at school. That wasn't
Yes,
fun.
watching his tactics are very similar to that approach in life.
People trying to climb between climbing bars and walls in order to hide and save themselves. Yeah. But I think that for the moment is kind of where we are. But yeah, Everton, just for gits and shiggles, what do you think the score against the mighty Everton might be?
I will be there on Saturday, and I think the Boy Hotspur channel might live stream the whole game just for a laugh. I would like to think we could win 3 or 4-0 and it'd be a convincing performance, but we're going to scrape to a 2-1 victory and we'll score that second goal in the 88th or 90th minute. It'll be scrappy where it get an own goal or something, and we'll all embrace Postecoglou, and we'll all be singing Big Ange, and we'll be thumping our chests, and the war paint will be on, and we'll be saying this is a start of great things. It'll be another walk to a Seven Sisters train station thinking, what a load of shit I've just had to watch again.
I want my money back. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have bought him. I think we paid too much, and I think that's by the by. It wasn't my money. Solanke, I would like to see him score.
Let's give him an opportunity. Let's give him a crack. He was lively in the first half last night.
Yeah,
but we're
he was
certainly grown-ups, intelligent enough, and know football well enough to say that was only one game of football. He's
absolutely.
only as good.
The only thing
as good as the product around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And my fear is that we've seen it with far too many other footballers. And the longer it goes on, which is, again, ridiculous thing to say after one game of football, but the longer it goes on, the more people start talking about it and the more people we're sending in video clips of certain other strikers that we've had over the years that just have not worked.
As long as it's not a video clip of Puff the Magic Dragon sucking on his laughing gas.
Oh, my God. I couldn't believe that. And do you know the BBC, bless them, the people who are very selective on what they class as news, said that footage had been released.
No, he uploaded it to his own TikTok channel.
Yeah, I tell you when it was when it was discovered. That's it. The footage was discovered when he pressed publish on his phone, as he's giving it the old booyaka shad down in some nightclub, on a school night. Just surreal. And I think we've seen as well. I think we've seen enough those clips of him doing the Mixmaster F in the changing room.
Prior to him joining us, there were clubs that were backing away and weren't prepared to complete deals because he was on bail to Sussex Police, as he was from Brighton and Hove Albion, wasn't he? And there was an allegation of a sexual offence occurring in a nightclub. And when
absolutely,
you start doing
but we were told
diligence,
we were told for doing due diligence, we were told quite firmly, because I was very by the line on that, and I said, this is exactly the situation. He's not been charged. He's a person involved in inquiries that are still ongoing, and that's the extent of the heat on him. And I had people say, well, you would come out with that, wouldn't you? You're a racist. You don't like brown people. I said, no, this is a really awkward loose end surrounding this guy. And it shouldn't be just dismissed because Spurs are about to buy him, and therefore, and I've done this sketch with other people. I've got a guy here, he's bet down on his luck. That's okay. We're going to put him in a lily white shirt, and all his dreams will come true, and all your dreams will come true. And that doesn't happen. It's fantasy. So we've now got this guy, as you say, there's a little bit of form there where, through perhaps no fault of his own, and that's again how lives get muddled up, no fault of his own, got himself involved in an inquiry, which he was dispensed with and discharged from and all that, we get it. But then we've got this other nonsense of nobody else wanting to invest in him, the DJ thing with him all going crazy and the hat on backwards. That's all well and good. I don't mind people having a good time, but I'd really like them to get the job done first. And we haven't seen that with him. We've seen hot and cold is the best way of describing it.
And I don't think there's any likelihood of us seeing hot again in the future. I think he's bang average. I think he's not lived up to the potential or the hope. He's 27 years of age. It's either now or never. And if it is never, he needs to go.
Well, the trouble is, and this takes us back full circle, is in Levy land, very few people get to leave. That's the problem. No matter how broken the ride is, very few people get to leave, and we don't see any signs so far from Postecoglou that he particularly was proactive in this. He says, "Oh yeah, he's been suspended," but he didn't say, "I've suspended him," because everybody knows it's not his decision.
Yeah.
Like, he might bring in Solanke, but that's because he was either offered Solanke or me.
I'd have taken you every day of the week, H.
Well, you've just got a very big heart. It's probably a condition you should see your GP about. Right, well that's it. I'm gonna go for Solanke to score against Everton against all common sense, rational, and reason. You're going for 2-1 in something that is drawn out like a Cagney death scene by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's one of those where you'll think it was probably more enjoyable going to my dentist.
I'm really. I didn't think that Leicester was going to be good, but I didn't know it was going to be that bad. That would be my TripAdvisor review for that game. That's it for now. Chris, thank you very much enormously for taking time out of whatever it is you do for a living. And wherever you are, good luck. Keep it Tottenham.